A barangay captain earning less than 30,000 pesos a month somehow owns 3 properties, 2 brand new SUVs, and sends all 4 of his kids to private school abroad. Nobody asks how. Nobody's allowed to ask how. Not really, because the paperwork that's supposed to answer that question sits in a filing cabinet somewhere, technically public, practically invisible, and conveniently never actually checked by anyone with the power to do something about it. That's the real story behind wealth and politics in this country. And it's not limited to barangay captains. It goes all the way up. Today we're talking about why politicians in the Philippines should be required to show their actual bank records, not just the vague, easily manipulated disclosure forms currently in place. The resistance to doing this tells you almost everything you need to know about who benefits from staying hidden. Filipino government officials are already required by law to file something called a Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth, commonly known as the SALN, every year. On paper, this sounds like exactly what we're asking for. Officials are supposed to disclose their properties, their income sources, their business interests, their liabilities. A SALN is essentially a self-reported form. The official fills it out themselves, about themselves, with very little independent verification happening behind it in practice. There's no requirement to show actual bank statements, actual transaction histories, actual proof that the numbers written down match reality. It's the financial equivalent of asking someone to grade their own exam and just trusting they were honest. Journalists or watchdog groups have found undervalued properties, omitted assets, vague business interests with no real detail, and numbers that don't add up against the visible lifestyle. The form exists. The accountability behind the form largely doesn't. When we talk about politicians showing their actual bank records, we're not asking for something radical and unprecedented. We're asking for the system that's already supposed to exist on paper to actually have teeth. This isn't really about curiosity into a stranger's finances. It's about the direct relationship between the money politicians control and the money they personally have access to. Every peso in the national budget, every peso in a local government unit's budget, comes from taxpayers, ordinary Filipinos. The people who decide how that money gets spent are the same people we're talking about when we talk about bank transparency. There is no other profession where the person managing your money is simultaneously the person who gets to decide whether you're allowed to check their own personal finances. Imagine hiring an accountant to manage your business's money, and that accountant refuses to let you see their personal bank account, while somehow also getting mysteriously wealthier every year. We shouldn't accept that from an accountant. We shouldn't accept it from the people managing an entire country's money either. The connection between hidden personal wealth and public corruption in the Philippines isn't theoretical. It's been documented repeatedly. Ghost projects that exist on paper but never get built. Overpriced contracts awarded to companies with suspicious ties to the officials approving them. Disaster relief funds that somehow shrink dramatically between the national budget and what actually reaches the affected communities. Somewhere, money that was supposed to go toward a public purpose ended up somewhere else instead. The paper trail conveniently goes cold right around the point where it would connect directly back to the officials' personal accounts. Full bank transparency wouldn't just be a symbolic gesture. It would close the exact gap where corruption currently hides. Public money gets funneled through shell companies, family members, names, or offshore accounts to create distance from personal enrichment. By the time investigators try to trace the money, it's already been laundered through enough layers to make proof difficult. Real access to actual banking records makes layering strategies dramatically harder to pull off. Now let's talk about the arguments against this, because there are real arguments, not just corrupt officials protecting themselves. The most common argument is privacy and personal safety. Politicians and their families receive genuine threats. There's a meaningful difference between transparency to oversight bodies and total public exposure of every transaction. Fully open financial records could become a tool for opposing camps to selectively leak or distort information. Financial records taken out of context can be twisted into the appearance of corruption even when none exists. Requiring this level of exposure could discourage genuinely talented, honest people from entering public service. Public service already asks a lot, and adding privacy costs on top of a pay cut could push away honest candidates. These arguments deserve a real response, not dismissal, because the goal is accountability for public funds. Full financial disclosure can mean mandatory, verified access for independent oversight bodies, not total public exposure. An anti-corruption commission with real investigative teeth can cross-check disclosed assets against real banking records. Certain sensitive details, like security information for family members, could remain protected. Financial substance, like income sources and unusual transaction patterns, stays fully verifiable by authorized people. Several countries with stronger anti-corruption records use verified access models, not public data dumps. The current SALN system is already weaponized politically, spotlighting rivals and protecting allies selectively. A rigorous, independently verified system raises the evidentiary bar, making scandals harder to fake or bury. A verified transparency system lets honest officials prove their integrity instead of just asserting it. Filipino political culture has treated personal enrichment while in office as an unspoken, almost expected cost of doing business. Normalizing corruption makes accountability feel abnormal and unreasonable instead of the baseline expectation. Imagine disaster relief funds tracked from national allocation down to barangay level, with gaps flagged automatically. Infrastructure contracts go to the company with the best bid, not the closest personal relationship. A functioning deterrent against routine corruption that drains resources away from roads, hospitals, and classrooms. This isn't about assuming every politician is corrupt, because that's not fair or accurate either. Honest officials work within a broken system that makes honesty harder and corruption easier to get away with. Real transparency protects honest officials by letting them visibly demonstrate integrity. If you are entrusted with public money, the public has a right to verify you're not redirecting it into your own pocket. That's not an unreasonable invasion of privacy. That's the basic price of the job. Any position of financial trust in serious institutions comes with real oversight attached. The politicians resisting this hardest are rarely the ones with nothing to hide. If there's truly nothing to hide, what exactly is the transparency threatening? Demand receipts from the people managing yours.